Good morning. Okay, that microphone is on. That microphone is off. Okay, good morning, everybody. So, sorry, it took me a little bit to get going. I had to go grab my coffee and then it was like super full, so I was trying to like sip the super hot coffee so I didn't spill it on the way into the room. Coffee is the stuff of life. All right. So, good morning, everybody. How are you doing today? I hope you're doing well. Welcome to Grow the Info. I'm Little Green Kitty. Here we like to share information with you guys that might not be covered by other sources. Some things that, maybe is getting overlooked because of all the other craziness going on, right? So, one of the things that I haven't seen very many people talking about has been this hearing that is happening regarding forecasting space weather. Space weather is something that is very important to us, even on Earth being shielded by our magnetosphere, however you want to say it. We can still be very affected by things like solar flares, and scientists have also been able to figure out a way to test for gravitational waves, and they have twice now found evidence of gravitational waves. And this is something that, of course, Einstein predicted, like, I don't know, over 50 years ago. He was like, this is probably going to be a thing, and they're probably going to be able to find evidence of this. And then we have. So, in increasing all of these testing abilities and all of this technology regarding space, and they have the Hubble telescope, which has been giving us insane pictures of deep space. By the way, okay, wait, hold on a second. Disclaimer. This whole thing is going to be under the impression that you guys watching believe in space. I know that there are some people that don't. There are some people that believe in like flat Earth and like the dome theory and stuff like that. So all this is all going to be with the understanding that you guys maybe believe in space. So, okay, disclaimer over. So with all of the increasing of technologies, we have been able to see a lot more phenomena that happen, and scientists have been able to calculate. And okay, I guess I can't go too into detail, but it's kind of like you can see into the past of things that happened before, supernova and stuff like that, and they have actually been able to line up dates and times with some kind of ancient accounts. I guess not really ancient, but kind of Greek-Roman era accounts of phenomena that people saw in the sky. And of course back then they didn't know what they were seeing. They just saw some kind of crazy fireball going on and they were like, holy crap. So they were able to figure out that people have actually written about seeing those things in the past. And we know now that sometimes that stuff, even as far away as it seems, has an effect here on Earth. And after the stream, I will go into just how much things like that are connected. I'll do that afterwards. So they're supposed to be starting soon, but we all know how the government works. So I will be maybe tweeting out some information while this is going on. So if you want to follow us on Grow the Info is our name on Twitter. You can follow us there, and I also try to put out recall notices and things like that. So it's good to follow us there anyway. You can check us out at dailygreens.org. Right now, that is our URL. We will be changing it soon, so make sure that you have hit the subscribe button here on YouTube and turn on the bell notifications little guy thing. That way you get notified every time we go live and every time I put out a new video or schedule something in advance. And I will, of course, let you guys know whenever our URL changes. So let me switch over really quick. Let me make sure that everything is lined up right on this other thing. Okay, so they have not started yet. Alright, so I need to take that off and put this on. Okay, and then transition it for you guys. Okay, so quickly like a bunny, we are going to look at this. So this is the full committee markup of HR 5260. You can find this at science.house.gov. I did not put a link in the description. I did put an excerpt from the bill in the description, though, that kind of describes what they're going to be talking about and the purpose of this. So there is that. But again, science.house.gov on the home page. Let's go back to the home page so I can show you how you can find it yourself since I didn't link it. On the home page, let's see, under upcoming, here we go, January 9th, full committee markup of HR 5260. And then if you click on where it says legislation, and I've already downloaded it, so it's just going to download it again. Are you guys seeing the right thing? Yes, you are. Okay. So 5260. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, Section 1, short title, this act may be cited as the Promoting Research and Observations of Space Weather to Improve Forecasting of Tomorrow Act, or the PROSWIFT Act. Forecasting of Tomorrow Act. Nice title there. Sounds kind of, Disney-esque. All right, the policy. It shall be the policy of the United States to prepare and protect against the social and economic impacts of space weather phenomena by supporting sanctions to improve space weather forecasts and predictions, including sustaining and enhancing critical observations, identifying research needs, and promoting opportunities for research to operations and operations to research collaborations both within and outside the federal government. Both within and outside. All right, so research collaboration, so private sector and public sector, okay? Advancing space weather models, engaging with all sectors of the space weather community, including academia and the commercial sector, and understanding the needs of space weather and users. And then it goes on to specify, can you guys hear that jet going over? There have been a lot of awesome jets and bombers and things flying over lately. All right, space weather phenomena pose a significant threat to ground-based and space-based critical infrastructure, modern technological systems, and humans working in space. The effects of severe space weather on the electric power grid, satellites and satellite communications and information, aviation operations, astronauts living and working in space, of course, and space-based position, navigation, and timing systems could have significant societal, economical, national security, and health impacts. Okay, so let me check and make sure that they still haven't started yet. You haven't started yet. Oh, no, they have started. All right, so make sure that you have hit subscribe if you haven't yet already. Let me switch to a closer view. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
And international communities. Addressing our nation's space weather needs and capabilities has been a bipartisan, bicameral congressional priority for many years. I want to particularly thank Mr. Perlmutter, who has introduced versions of this legislation in previous Congresses, and his staff for their persistence and dedication to the important issue. But I do think that the legislation before us today is stronger because of the efforts that Mr. Perlmutter and our colleagues across the aisle and the broader space weather community have put into it. I look forward to considering this bipartisan bill today and quickly moving it to the floor for consideration by the House. I now recognize our ranking member, Mr. Lucas, for opening remarks.
Thank you, Chairwoman Johnson. This morning, the committee will mark up H.R. 5260, the Promoting Research and Observations of Space Weather to Improve the Forecasting of Tomorrow Act. This committee has held multiple hearings on this important topic. This Congress, the Space and Environment Subcommittees, held a joint hearing on this topic in October. Members of the subcommittees heard from experts about the potentially severe effects of space weather incidents and how we can best prepare for and mitigate the consequences of these incidents. The impacts of space weather incidents will only increase as we see development of low Earth economy and more space-based assets providing services and information to us all. One key takeaway from this hearing is that a strategy addressing space weather risks must involve government, academic, and commercial participation. I particularly want to emphasize the need to ensure the participation of the commercial sector, which will be the subject of an amendment I will offer this morning. If my amendment's adopted, I believe this legislation becomes a comprehensive bill that addresses the needs of all those who are participating in developing the United States space weather strategy. And with the adoption of my amendment, I will offer my support to passage of this bill. I want to thank Congressman Perlmutter and his staff for their willingness to negotiate up to the last minute so that we could reach a deal to put forth what I believe is the best possible version of this legislation on this important topic. And with that, I thank you, Chairwoman Johnson, and I yield back.
Thank you. We will now consider H.R. 5260, the PROSWIFT Act. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 5260, a bill to improve.
Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open to amendment at any point. I now recognize Mr. Perlmutter to speak on this bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I move to strike the last word. I'm pleased we're here today to mark up H.R. 5260, the PROSWIFT Act. Space weather is electromagnetic activity, solar eruptions, solar flares, and radiation, which come from the sun and can have significant societal, economic, national security, and health implications both here on Earth and in space. Over 4 years ago, Dr. Dan Baker from the University of Colorado testified in front of this committee about the dangers of space weather events on the electric grid, our communication systems, and our satellites. At that hearing, he said, had an observed July 2012 space weather event actually hit the Earth, we would, and I'm quoting him, still be picking up the pieces. That testimony stuck with me, and when Senators Gary Peters and Cory Gardner introduced the Space Weather Research and Forecasting Act a few months later, I was eager to start working on the House companion bill. Since 2016, the Senate has passed a version of this legislation a couple times, and the Science Committee took up one of those bills in 2018. But we've never been able to come to an agreement on language that can pass both the House and the Senate. Thankfully, I think today we are going to take the first step towards ending that streak and finally pass this bill into law. In 2015, the Office of Science and Technology Policy pulled together the best and brightest from within the various agencies, academia, and the private sector working on space weather to produce the National Space Weather Strategy and Action Plan. These documents help renew our focus on the critical research and operational needs to improve our space weather enterprise, and OSTP updated the strategy and action plan again last year. H.R. 5260 helps build upon this work by providing the structure needed for the continued advancement of heliophysics research, collection of new data and observations, and improvements to our modeling and forecasting. Our bill also, for the first time, clearly delineates the roles and responsibilities of the key federal agencies involved in space weather, including NOAA, NASA, the National Science Foundation, the Department of Defense, the FAA, the Interior Department, and OSTP. Additionally, our legislation brings in new voices from the academic community, commercial space weather sector, and space weather forecast end users. These communities will participate in the Space Weather Advisory Group created in the bill, as well as on new government academia commercial roundtable, which is created and then facilitated by the National Academies of Science. Finally, the bill also sets up a formal research to operations and operations to research mechanisms to help break down barriers between the research community and forecasters by encouraging sharing of information and requirements to improve the pipeline of new observations and technologies. This bill will significantly improve our understanding of space weather and better prepare us for its impacts on the electric grid, the communication networks, satellite operations, airline operations, and as we continue to add more things to the internet, to transportation systems and our connected economy. It will also help NASA understand the radiation environment, as the chairwoman said, for our astronauts on the International Space Station, on their way back to the moon, and most importantly, and I don't have my bumper sticker, on their journey to Mars by 2033. We've been working on this bill for some time now, and I want to thank Mo Brooks for his help pushing for this bipartisan legislation, as well as Chairwoman Johnson and her staff and Ranking Member Lucas and his staff for their support over the years of getting us to where we are today. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the following letters of support we've received on the bill from the University of Colorado, the University Corporation for Atmospheric Research, the American Commercial Space Weather Association, the American Astronomical Society, the American Geophysical Union, the University of Michigan, the University of New Hampshire, and Pennsylvania State University. And with that, I encourage all my colleagues to support the bill, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. Where's your bumper sticker?
I don't know. Where is my bumpers? It's one of them is on my car.
Okay.
I know.
Okay, now the chair recognizes Mr. Brooks for his remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for bringing this bill up for markup today. The Promoting Research and Observations of Space Weather to Improve the Forecasting of Tomorrow Act, called the PROSWIFT Act, will advance America's understanding of the potential consequences of severe space weather events that have proven in the past to be far-reaching and potentially damaging. By way of background, and as has been already outlined today, space weather is a collection of physical processes beginning at the sun with solar winds and ultimately affecting human activities on Earth and in space. These solar winds and their interaction with Earth's atmosphere are not understood as well as they should be. This bill is a step towards a better understanding. At Alabama's Marshall Space Flight Center, scientists and engineers have been at the forefront of this vital research. Under the PROSWIFT Act, their research will be enhanced to advance our nation's understanding and ability to forecast space weather. Because Mr. Perlmutter and I are both passionate advocates for deep space exploration, I emphasize the relationship between space weather observation and forecasting and deep space exploration. The PROSWIFT Act makes it clear that not only can space weather impact us on the terrestrial frontier, but it can and will impact us in the final frontier of deep space exploration. In order to achieve the goals set for NASA's Artemis program, and before we launch a manned mission to Mars, we must better understand how space weather phenomena impacts life in space, satellites, and other space instrumentation. It is critical that we have the ability to properly forecast space weather and prepare for and protect astronauts from the dangers of solar radiation. I want to thank my colleague, Mr. Perlmutter, for his leadership on space weather and his partnership on the PROSWIFT Act. I encourage my colleagues to vote for this bill.
Thank you very much. Are there any others who wish to be recognized? Ms. Horn?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank, Representative Perlmutter and Brooks and Ranking Member Lucas for the work on this. Today's markup of H.R. 5260, the PROSWIFT Act, represents an important step for this committee in addressing a critical issue for our nation, space weather. As the chairwoman noted in her opening statement, space weather phenomena such as solar flares, solar wind, and geomagnetic storms of energized charged particles can disrupt our ground and space-based technologies as well as our infrastructure. While economic impacts of space weather are difficult to know precisely, a 2017 study estimated the cost to U.S. electricity consumers alone in the $400 million to $10 billion range for a moderate space weather event, and $1 billion to $20 billion for a more extreme event. And that's just one economic sector. That's why it is imperative that we coordinate our federal agencies' work on space weather, collaborate with academia, industry, and international partners, and invest in basic research and operational capabilities that can improve our capability to model and predict space weather phenomenon. H.R. 5260 does just that. It identifies roles and responsibilities for federal agencies involved in space weather-related activities and establishes an interagency working group led by the Office of Science and Technology Policy to coordinate those efforts. It also establishes an advisory group to benefit from the advice of academic, commercial space weather sectors, and space weather end users. The bill directs the undertaking of a comprehensive survey of the needs of space weather users and establishes a policy to sustain a baseline capability for space weather observations, as well as directing the development of an integrated strategy for observations and measurements that are essential for space weather research models, forecasting, and prediction. In addition, this bill establishes important pathways to build, sustain, and enhance the transition of research to operations and operations to help inform research. One such pathway includes a forum for ongoing knowledge transfer and information exchange through the arrangement of a space weather government, academic, commercial roundtable. Among the many federal agencies involved in space weather activities, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, has an important role in collecting space-based observations and measurements and conducting basic research on the sun and the Earth-Sun environment. As the chairwoman of the Space and Aeronautics Subcommittee, I look forward to continuing to monitor NASA's basic research on solar and space physics and the transition of that research into operational capabilities that can enable improved space weather forecasting and the prediction that underlies the policy, as well as ensuring the protection of our astronauts. Madam Chair, I believe this bill, H.R. 5260, represents an important, addressing critical issues both for research but also for our economic security and ability to operate on the terrestrial environment, and an important example of how we can come to compromise and consensus reaching across the aisle that this committee has done well on a number of issues, and I urge my colleagues to support it, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. Any other requests for time? Mr. Foster,
Strike the last word.
recognized.
You know, when, you know, as we're, I hope about to pass this important piece of legislation, I think because this is a time when the rationale for international collaboration in science is really under stress from a number of directions, I think we should acknowledge that what we're doing is following in the footsteps of Hannes Alfvén, who won the Nobel Prize, a Swedish electrical engineer and plasma physicist who won the Nobel Prize in 1970 for his contributions. Besides Alfvén waves, his discovery and description of Alfvén waves, which drove me nuts in graduate school doing those calculations, he also made contributions to the behavior of the aurora, the Van Allen radiation belts, the effect of magnetic storms on the Earth's magnetic field, the terrestrial magnetosphere, and the dynamics of plasmas in the Milky Way. And so I think it's really important that we understand that the world would be a poorer place without international collaboration. And our country will end up being a less safe place if we reject that sort of collaboration. And so I want to join everyone else in helping Hannes Alfvén answer the musical question, what's it all about, Alfvén? Yield back.
Thank you very much. Any other requests for time? Seeing none, then Mr. Perlmutter is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment number 1, amendment to H.R. 5260, offered by Mr. Perlmutter of Colorado.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense of the reading, and without objection, so ordered. I recognize the gentleman for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you. And I move to strike the last word. Madam Chair, this manager's amendment is really just a lot of technical amendments and repagination. So it makes improvements to the bill based on feedback we received since introducing the bill in November. And I should tell the committee that we have worked a lot with the administration, particularly NOAA, in connection with this bill. We also adjust several of the timelines included in the bill to allow the agencies, the advisory group, and the National Academies of Science enough time to complete their work. And with that, I encourage all my colleagues to support the manager's amendment, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. Any further comments? Hearing none, then the vote occurs on the amendment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Do we have the next amendment is Mr. Lucas's amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment number 2, amendment to H.R. 5260, offered by Mr. Lucas.
Ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading without objection, so ordered. I recognize the gentleman for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Chairwoman Johnson. My amendment would add a section of the legislation establishing a commercial space data pilot program at NOAA. This amendment is drawn from a comprehensive language agreed to at the end of the 115th Congress by members of this committee. Let me again be clear that if this amendment is adopted, I'm prepared to support the underlying legislation. During the committee's October hearing, we heard from former NOAA Administrator Admiral Conrad Lautenbacher about the role of the commercial sector in forecasting and preparing for space weather events. He noted the commercial space industry has seen tremendous growth in the last decade and has a vested interest in investing in the collection of space weather data in order to help protect commercial space infrastructure in low Earth orbit. Further, he made clear there are companies who are prepared to set up their activities if they have a clearly defined role in obtaining space weather data. My amendment balances the need to help ensure there's a market for commercial space weather data with the existing roles of the federal government and the academic community. And let me emphasize to my colleagues, this program is merely a pilot and expires after 4 years. So we would not permanently authorize a program with this amendment. I want to again thank Mr. Perlmutter and his staff for their good faith efforts to reach this compromise. This is the third version of space weather legislation that's been considered since the 114th Congress. And because of their willingness to work with us and accommodate our concerns, this is the first House-introduced piece of space weather legislation to pass out of the Science Committee. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment and, upon its adoption, support the final bill. And with that, I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lucas, and I appreciate your willingness to work with us to find the compromise language that the majority could support. I support the amendment, and I yield back. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Mr. Perlmutter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to strike the last word. I rise to support my occasional friend, Mr. Lucas's amendment. No, he is my friend, and actually, you know, part of legislating is to develop friendships around this place so that when you do run into loggerheads or disagreements, you can sit down and say, okay, is there a better way to approach this? And we were able to do that, and I do thank him for his friendship. I understand the ranking member's passion for involvement of the commercial space sector in our weather forecasting. And with this amendment in our space weather forecasting, I share much of his passion for ensuring the commercial sector participates in these activities because they will have good ideas, good technologies, and good products from which we all can benefit. That is actually one of the key reasons I've been working on this bill for the last 4 years. I wanted to better include the commercial sector and academia in the assessments and planning being conducted by the federal government regarding space weather. That is why the PROSWIFT Act creates the first ever space weather advisory group, so commercial space weather companies, the academic community, and space weather end users like the airlines can all advise on the development of the integrated strategy. The PROSWIFT Act also creates a new government academic industry roundtable to facilitate ongoing dialogue between these important stakeholders throughout the year and not just on the development of integrated strategy. I'm glad to support this amendment, and I look forward to its passage, and I look forward to the passage of the PROSWIFT Act. With that, I yield back.
Thank you very much. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The amendment is agreed to. Are there any other amendments? Seeing none, then a reporting quorum being present, I move that the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology report H.R. 5260 as amended to the House with the recommendation that the bill be approved. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. I ask unanimous consent that staff be authorized to make any necessary technical and conforming changes to the bill. Without objection, so ordered. Members will have 2 subsequent calendar days in which to submit supplemental, minority, or additional views on the measure. I want to thank the members for their cooperation. This markup is concluded, and we adjourn. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good, she said. All right. Okay, so it's passed, it's approved. They are going to be putting more money and effort and everything into getting more research and development to be able to forecast space weather. And as you know, they said it does have an effect on stuff that happens on the Earth. So to go over a little bit of that, obviously we know the sun, it has photons and it helps our plants grow and our crops grow, right? So we know obviously that stuff from the sun, the photons, get through our atmosphere and hit the planet. So if you think about, like, if some kind of crazy solar storm happens, then that can have a huge effect. Let me make sure that this isn't gonna, darn it, it's gonna start playing. So that can have a huge effect on what happens on our planet. Hush thing. And how things grow. It can also scorch the planet. There has been plenty of evidence that says that when there's a huge solar flare, it actually strips off part of the ions and everything that help keep our magnetosphere complete. So when there are huge storms, that's why there are issues sometimes with first responders, but there are some waves that actually help first responders and radio waves be able to spread. So sometimes they want to be able to know about that kind of stuff in advance so that they can try to test telecommunications networks and things like that. And as the bill stated, they are going to be looking at working with private sector companies as well to be able to create some of these innovations. Of course, the government doesn't have like some kind of science lab where they are developing this stuff themselves. They do have military bases and such where that happens, but a lot of the technology that is used is oftentimes created and developed first by private companies. And those private companies oftentimes receive subsidies from the government so that they can carry out research and this work. So maybe like Elon Musk is helping them work on this. Who knows? I would not be surprised. So, I guess that's all we're going to cover with that today. It was just a report on the bill. It's been favorably reported, so they are going to make any needed adjustments, as I said, to it, and it's going to continue on down its way to become full-fledged, of course. And as I mentioned earlier, they have the Hubble Deep Space Telescope where we've been seeing a whole lot of stuff, but if you are unaware, they are also working on another huge telescope called the James Webb Telescope, and it's pretty much, it's a huge contraption, and it's going to see way farther and therefore back in time, okay, because hashtag physics, so it's going to be able to see way farther than the Hubble Deep Space Telescope that we have now, but they have been working on it for a very long time, and they keep postponing the end date that they say that it will be completed at, so we will see. It has these huge, like, hexagonal, crazy, like, fold-out sensor thingies, and, like, this crazy gold-plated stuff and everything that they're doing, so it's a lot of work that they are undertaking. And I'm curious to know what you guys think about this. Do you think that this is something that is worth our government's time and effort, or do you think that this is something that should not be worried about? And another thing earlier, so right before the stream, I mentioned that some of our ancestors have seen some supernova and stuff in the past. and we are able to accurately calculate when in time that was. And then when you look at archaeological digs and stuff, like what's it called? Archaeological digs. We can see that around that same time period, that there have been massive things that have happened to the earth, natural disasters and stuff. I'm sorry, every time I can hear my kids in the background, I'm like, my brain starts going into mom mode and I forget what I'm talking about. So there have been natural disasters, and there have also been droughts and other things like that. We know that the Australia wildfires are going on right now, and if, for instance, there were to be some kind of gigantic solar flare happening, that could just make the situation that much worse. And a lot of us in the truther and independent journalist community and stuff are concerned about how the natural disasters have been kind of ramping up and everything so far. And hi, Carolyn, by the way. I should have said that already. Hi, Carolyn. How you doing? Thank you for joining the stream. So, I know a lot of people are concerned about the impact long-term that's going to happen. There are some people that think that the climate stuff that's happening, whether they, believe in global warming or not, a lot of people believe that the climate is changing. So there are some people that think that this is going to lead to an ice age, and there are some people that think that this is going to lead to kind of like a scorched earth future. Now, also with the Australian wildfires, it's important to remember that with all that smoke that is happening, that can cause huge storms itself. There have also been geologists that have proven that when there have been huge storms and gigantic natural disasters, volcanoes erupting and things like that in our Earth's history, that led to huge extinction events. Just like Snafu Snaps was saying that in his stream that he did last night on the Australian wildfires. Check that out if you haven't yet. You can look at snafusnaps.com to find him quickly, or look him up on YouTube. But when there are huge fires like that, there's a massive amount of smoke, and it can, I just said it, all lead to storms and then other extinction level events. So we need to be keeping all of this in mind. Just because we don't see the impact right now, that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be an impact later on down the road. So thank you for joining, everybody. I might do another stream here soon. There are a few other hearings that are going on. They have been doing a lot of hearings at one time the past couple days. So if you follow us on Twitter, @GrowTheInfo is our name. Then I have been putting out a couple polls to see like what people want to hear covered. But obviously I'm just gonna pick one if nobody votes. So this is the one that I picked today. And it did not go as long as I was hoping. I was hoping I could get more information. But whatever. So let me go over to the chat and say, yes, woot, #Snafu Crew. That is right. And hello, all of the viewers. We have 5 viewers. That's amazing for my streams. That's amazing. Hi. I'm so excited now. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you missed the other streams that we have done recently, I did one on the Clean Water Act and pollution regarding it, and then they had another one that happened just the other day regarding one of the chemicals that they are concerned about and whether or not they should regulate it. So if you look at, I believe they were both from the House floor. So if you look at our videos and stuff, there are quite a few things that have an impact on us directly that they have been talking about lately. And of course, everybody is very distracted and concerned, and rightfully so, about what's going on in the Middle East with the Iran and Iraq situation. So thank you, everybody, for watching the stream that I shared, and the bill and all of that kind of good information can be found on science.house.gov. So that's it, I guess. Make sure that you have hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell notifications so that you get notified when we go live or when we schedule live streams and when we put out videos. And you can check out our website. It is still thedailygreens.org right now. We will be changing it soon, so make sure that you follow us on Twitter and that you're subscribed here so that you know when we switch on over. And we put out press releases and stuff. I just did one last night that had some recalls and things, so go ahead and check that out. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you. Oh, hi, sweet Jenna. Hi. Thank you for joining. And thank you for joining Carolyn. Yay. Hashtag Snafu Crew. Have a good day, everybody. Let's put on some tunes.